Does masturbating every day tank your testosterone? Could it actually ruin your fertility or mess with your long term health? You've had the questions, you've heard the rumors, and you've probably felt a little worried or even guilty about it. But let's be honest, you've likely been too embarrassed to ask a doctor. Well, today we're getting the straight up truth. We sat down with a top urologist to get the real science backed answers on what a daily habit actually does to your body. And his first point might surprise you. It has nothing to do with your genitals, but everything to do with your brain. One of the most common topics men bring up in my clinic, often in a whisper, is masturbation frequency. There's just so much cultural baggage and shame tied to this one subject. So let me just say this loud and clear: masturbation is a normal, healthy part of human sexuality. The questions you have are valid, and wanting to understand your own body is one of the best things you can do for your health. So let's set the myths and the shame aside and just talk about the science. Forget what you've heard from friends or read on some weird internet forum. We're going to break down what's really happening inside your body, from your hormones to your prostate, when you ejaculate daily. The goal here isn't to give you a magic number of times you should or shouldn't. It's to give you the facts so you can make healthy choices for yourself. Your hormones and brain chemistry. First up, let's talk about your brain. Every single time you orgasm, your brain unleashes this powerful cocktail of chemicals. The most famous one is dopamine, which you've probably heard called the feel-good hormone. It's part of your brain's reward system, the same chemical that makes you feel good after a great meal, hitting a goal, or getting a good workout in. As you get aroused, dopamine levels rise, and the orgasm itself creates this powerful, pleasurable rush. But right after that peak, your brain releases another hormone called prolactin. Prolactin brings on that feeling of sexual satisfaction and is mostly responsible for the refractory period, that downtime you need before you can get going again. It also makes you feel sleepy, which is why a lot of people feel super relaxed and ready for a nap after an orgasm. This whole thing is a completely natural cycle. On top of that, you get a hit of oxytocin, the love hormone, which is known to lower stress, and endorphins, which are your body's own natural painkillers. So when we talk about daily masturbation, we're just talking about a daily activation of this natural reward and relaxation circuit. You're not draining your brain, you're just using a system that's already built into your biology. Those feelings of tiredness or that moment of post-nut clarity are direct results of this hormonal shift. They aren't signs of damage, they're just the predictable effects of your body's chemistry at work. The prostate cancer connection. Now, let's get to what might be the most surprising part of this whole conversation: the link between ejaculation and the health of your prostate. For years, men were fed myths about self pleasure causing all kinds of problems. But a huge amount of medical research has actually pointed in the exact opposite direction. One of the biggest studies on this was done by researchers at Harvard. They followed nearly 32,000 men for almost 20 years, and what they found was pretty groundbreaking. Men who ejaculated 21 or more times a month had a 20 to 33% lower risk of developing prostate cancer compared to men who only ejaculated 4 to 7 times a month. This wasn't some tiny study, this was a massive long-term project that's been backed up by other research, including a similar Australian study. So what's the thinking here? The main theory is what we call the prostate stagnation hypothesis. The idea is that your prostate makes fluid that becomes part of your semen. If that fluid isn't flushed out regularly, it could collect potentially harmful things, like carcinogens, that might increase inflammation and the risk of abnormal cells over time. So, frequent ejaculation, whether from sex or masturbation, might help to regularly clean out the prostate, reducing the buildup of these substances and lowering your overall cancer risk. Now, to be clear, this research shows a strong link, not a direct cause and effect that guarantees you won't get cancer. Many things factor into prostate cancer risk, like your genetics and diet, but the evidence is pretty compelling and suggests that a healthy, active sex life, including regular masturbation, is likely a good thing for your long-term prostate health, not something to worry about. If you're finding this useful and want more myth-busting health advice that's backed by actual science, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us keep making content that clears up confusion and helps you take control of your health. Fertility and testosterone, busting the myths. All right, let's tackle the two biggest fears that always circle this topic: that daily masturbation will kill your testosterone levels and make you infertile. Honestly, this is probably the number one myth I have to bust in my clinic. First, testosterone. The whole idea that ejaculating uses up your T levels is a complete myth. Testosterone is a hormone that's mainly produced in your testicles, and it's managed by a complex system in your brain. Getting aroused can cause a very small, temporary bump in your T levels, and ejaculating might cause a brief dip right after, but these changes are tiny, short lived, and have zero effect on your overall baseline testosterone. There is no scientific evidence that masturbating daily, or even more, will cause a long term drop in testosterone. Things like your sleep quality, diet, exercise, and stress levels have a way bigger impact on your T levels than how often you ejaculate. Now, for fertility. This is where things get a little more nuanced. The big fear is that if you masturbate every day, you'll run out of sperm when you're trying to have a baby. That's also false. Your body is a sperm factory, producing millions of them every single day. Sure, daily ejaculation will temporarily lower your semen volume and sperm count per ejaculate, but your body gets right back to work and replenishes the supply, usually within a day or two. For a guy with normal sperm production, this temporary dip doesn't cause infertility. In fact, some studies suggest that frequent ejaculation might actually be good for sperm quality because it clears out older sperm, making sure the ones that are delivered are younger and better swimmers. The only time we ever advise paying attention to frequency is when a couple is actively trying to conceive. For the best odds, studies show that sperm quality is often at its peak after 2 or 3 days of abstinence. So, during your partner's 3 to 5 day fertile window, it's a smart move to hold off on masturbation and focus on having sex every day or two to maximize your chances. Outside of that specific window, daily masturbation poses no threat to your fertility. The too much threshold, when it becomes a problem. So, if daily masturbation isn't really harmful, doesn't wreck your hormones, and might even help your prostate, can there be too much? Yes. But the problem isn't a number. The issue is about why you're doing it and whether it's having negative consequences. In medicine, we start to see it as a problem when the behavior feels compulsive. That means you feel an uncontrollable urge to do it, and it's starting to mess with your life. Ask yourself a few honest questions. Are you skipping work, school, or plans with friends to masturbate? Is it hurting your relationship with your partner because you'd rather do that than be intimate with them? Is it causing you a lot of guilt, stress, or anxiety? Do you feel like you have to do it rather than doing it for pleasure? If you're answering yes to these, you might have crossed a line from a healthy habit to a problem, and it could be time to talk to a therapist or a doctor. Another physical issue that can pop up is related to how you do it, not how often. Some guys develop what's called death grip syndrome. This is where you masturbate with such a tight grip that the normal sensations of sex with a partner can't compare. This can lead to delayed ejaculation or make it hard to orgasm with a partner, which can cause a lot of frustration. I remember a patient in his late 20s who was dealing with severe anxiety because he couldn't finish with his girlfriend. He was perfectly healthy, but we found out he had this very specific aggressive masturbation routine he'd been using for years. He had basically trained his brain and body for a level of stimulation that real world intimacy couldn't match. The solution wasn't for him to stop masturbating, it was to change his technique, use lubricant, and focus on different types of sensation. It took time, but he was able to resensitize himself and enjoy being with his partner again. His problem wasn't the daily frequency, it was the rigid and intense how. The psychological aspect: guilt, shame, and stress. Finally, we have to talk about what might be the biggest side effect of all for some people: the psychological impact. For many, the most damaging part of masturbating isn't physical at all, it's the overwhelming guilt and shame. These feelings usually come from cultural or social taboos that have labeled a totally natural act as something dirty or wrong. That mental burden can cause way more harm than the act itself, leading to anxiety, depression, and just feeling bad about yourself. From a purely biological standpoint, masturbation is one of the body's best built in stress relief tools. That release of endorphins, dopamine, and oxytocin during an orgasm is a powerful, natural anti anxiety cocktail. It can lower your stress hormone, cortisol, help you relax, and even improve your sleep. In the high stress world we live in, having a healthy, private, and easy way to release tension is a huge asset for your mental health. So the conversation really needs to shift. Instead of asking, Is it bad to masturbate daily? A much better question is my relationship with this habit a healthy one? If it's a source of pleasure, stress relief, and self discovery, and it isn't getting in the way of your life or relationships, then it's a healthy part of your life. But if it's driven by a compulsion and followed by a wave of shame, the problem isn't the act itself, it's the guilt you've attached to it. Working to see it for the normal biological function it is can be incredibly freeing and great for your mental health. So, what really happens if you masturbate daily? For most guys, the honest answer is not a lot of bad things, and maybe even a few good ones. Let's just quickly run through the science backed truth. It does not wreck your testosterone or your fertility. It triggers a natural temporary hormone cycle in your brain that can help with stress and sleep. And maybe most importantly, ejaculating frequently is strongly linked to a lower risk of prostate cancer. The real danger isn't in a number. It's not about how many times per day or per week. The danger is in compulsion, when the habit starts to control you and hurts your job, your relationships, and your mental well being. It's about the why and the how, not the how often. The bottom line is to listen to your body and be honest with yourself. Make sure it stays a healthy part of your life that brings you pleasure and release, not another source of stress, shame, or obligation.